Redditors, what's the stupidest thing you've said to a police officer? Story 1. I was pulled over 2 weeks after passing my test. The policeman asked me to wind down my window. I did. He then aggressively asked me, "What is it outside?" I didn't know what he was getting at, so I replied cold. He shook his head and said, "No, dark, now turn your lights on." Story 2. My response from a similar thread a long time ago. It was December 31st, 1999. A friend and I thought we were so slick. We were standing by an ATM at the stroke of midnight. We thought that the Y2K virus was going to cause the ATMs to just start spitting money out. Right before midnight, a police officer, seeing us in our all-black garb, asked what we were doing. When we told him, he started laughing us off and told us he'd split the money 3 ways with us if it started shooting out. Sadly, none of us made any extra money that night. Story 3. Blow me. So, I was delivering booze to a friend's place as he was having a drunken party, and I thought I'd be nice. Anyway, his buddy spills a half a tumbler of scotch down my shirt. I had to get to work, so I take off and hit one of those drinking and driving stops. Of course, the cop is like, "Phew, and how much have you had to drink?" Me nothing, my friend spilled scotch on me, cop a hummy fine. You'll find a truth cop, excuse me. Me thinking, and this is how I go to jail me. Oh, it's no, I mean, the straw you blow and a cop proceeds to laugh. Gives me a breath test and I blow 0. On with my day. DHE asked, was there a reason I was speeding? I said yes. He asked, what was it? I said I like speeding. Story 4. A few years back, my mate and I were walking down the street toward the bars in our town, rural Australia. We were drinking from a plastic bottle filled with vodka and juice, which isn't legal here, and the police drove past us. I quickly threw the bottle in the bin, but they saw us and pulled over. They 2 officers, 1 female, 1 male, were taking down our details, and we were drunkenly trying to get out the fine. I said, "We'll do anything to get out of this." She replied, "Oh yeah, like what?" Then I blurted out, "Dance for You." My mate and I then proceeded to do about 30 seconds of the choreography to Michael Jackson's Thriller on the street, magnificently lit by their patrol car headlights. It worked. No fine. Story 5. When I was 19, me and buddies were all out on an all-out drinking bender. We had a DD designated driver. It's about 3 a.m., and we're all slammed drunk. Cop pulls us over for going 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Cop walks up to car and immediately says, "I smell alcohol." He asks everyone for their IDs. I hand him mine, to which he is quick to hand it back. "Sir, that is your debit card." I immediately start laughing because I knew at that moment it was a guarantee I was going to the drunk tank for underage drinking. I was right. Story 6. Throwing party in my dorm room in college. Everyone in attendance was underage. 2 cops knock on the door, 1 male, 1 female. They end up being pretty nice and explain they got a noise complaint and will trust us to shut it down. As they were about to leave, I asked the lady cop, "Aren't you going to pat me down, officer? Got a ticket?" Story 7. So, I was speeding, and I mean speeding home one day when I see the red and blue in my rearview mirror. Stopped, cop did the walk, asked me why I was speeding, but was too nervous to say anything to the cop, and just kept shifting in my seat. Naturally, the cop thinks something's up, so he has me get out of the car, and proceeds to frisk me. I'm clenching my starfish as hard as I can, and he takes this as an omission that I'm hiding drugs or something. So he gloves up while he partner watches, and proceeds to give me a cavity search after I utterly begged him not to, which of course just eggs him on to doing it. Thinking he's going to score, he did, and so the reason I was speeding home and was acting all nervous was because halfway home, I felt that I had a massive movement about to happen, and not the solid type either. This was back when I was a shy shitter, so I felt totally embarrassed at telling the cop this. Felt even worse when he shoved that finger up there and it released the floodgates. I proceeded to take a giant liquidy all over his hand, his arm, pants, and right boot. Finger cop starts vomiting. His partner is laughing us off, and I'm so embarrassed that I wish they'd just police brutality me and shoot me. After finger cop cools down, and I explained the situation to them of just why I was speeding due to this, I was allowed to leave and go home. Strangely ticketless, and even more strangely, I was semi-cured of my shy shitting nature. So I guess I didn't really say anything, but I was stupid not saying something. Edit. Wow. Thank you for the gold. I can't believe my first ever gold is a story about shitting on a cop shakes head. Edit 2. AO1. Now my top comment is about taking an accidental dump on a cop. Fantastic. Story 8. I was a scared 16 years old kid. I went the wrong way down a one-way street, saw that the road became a 2-way just a block ahead. By the time I realized it was a one-way SD. So I kept going instead of trying to turn around illegally. Cop was at the intersection I went through, pulled me over, scared the out of me, yelling at me about the red light I ran. The stupidest thing I tried to say to a cop was that I was going the wrong way down a one-way. He told me to shut up when I started talking and came back with a very big ticket. I thought it through and went and took pictures of the intersection. See, what I was ticketed for was running a red light. There are no red lights the wrong way down a one-way street. Think about it. That would be crazy. So I went to court to contest my ticket. I wore a suit, was respectful, and when the judge asked almost sarcastically while looking at my particular info, "So you're going to tell me you didn't do it or something?" Huh. I told him, "Actually, sir, yes, because it's impossible to run a red light that isn't there." That got his interest, and he made eye contact. He sat up a little bit and asked what I meant. I told him about there not being a red light the wrong way down a one-way street. I asked if I could present the pictures, which the bailiff brought up. He laughed while looking at them, which included the street corners and enough surroundings to prove it was in fact the cross streets mentioned. I told the judge that I was apologizing to the officer and trying to tell him about the wrong way down a one-way, but got told to shut up and wasn't able to explain. The judge laughed again and said, "Well, he would have cited you for the right thing if he had just listened, but I can't cite you. Clearly you didn't run a red light." And he dismissed it. I only had to pay the court filing fee of $25. Yeehaw. Semi-drunk, me being escorted out of a bar by an officer at 21. Well, going to exercise my Second Amendment right and tell you to go yourself, cop, as he begins to cuff me. That's the Third Amendment, my sober friend walking with us. Actually, it's the First Amendment. Story 9. I was about 6 years old, and I had been home from school for maybe an hour. There was a knock at the door, and I ran to go get it. Thinking my friend wanted to play, I swung open the door to see a female police officer, and I said, "Nope, boat is home," and slammed the door. I realized my mistake, and went and got my mom to answer the door. Turns out the officer had shown up to let us know that my dad had been killed by a drunk driver earlier that day. Turns out being embarrassed wasn't the only issue that day. Story 10. I was smashed, waiting for a bus. I wasn't making a scene. I was just visibly wasted. I could barely sit straight. So while I'm sitting there kind of zoning out, 2 cops approached me and asked me for ID, which I somehow managed to find and show them. Then they started asking me what I was on, to which I responded nothing. I'm just really, really drunk. They keep pressing and yelling. They were furious for some reason, I guess because I was barely coherent. When one of them gets in my face and screams, "What did you take?" To which I respond, "Fucking ethanol." Edit cohesive, coherent, whatever. Story 11. I was driving Uber in an unfamiliar town, and at about 3 a.m., I asked an officer if there were any good donut shops nearby. "Did you really just ask me that? That Starbucks is closed, and I need coffee." Oh my God, as I realized the implication in the end. We had a good laugh, and he led me to an open coffee shop. Story 12. I actually ordered 2 cops to move their vehicles, as they were blocking an entry to my site. Were I not on the job, they'd probably have ignored me. Story 13. I was perched on some traffic lights waiting from some friends when a policeman asked, "Would you like to get down from there?" And I said, "Not really, apparently." Sometimes people use rhetorical questions and don't really want the answer. Life as an aspie can be fun sometimes. Edit specifically this light. Story 14. He wasn't a cop, but this is kind of in the same vein. I was buying a gun and had to fill out the application on a touch screen they had. One of the questions was, "Are you now, or have you ever been a fugitive from the law?" I looked up to the man selling the gun, and after I read the question aloud, I said, "Who in their right mind would answer yes to that?" I thought it was funny, but he looked at me coldly and said, "You are seriously jeopardizing your ability to purchase this weapon." Story 15. Yo, James, hide the weed. Was in a field playing football soccer and thought it would be funny to shout this directed toward an alleyway. As it turns out, it's not that funny. Got arrested. Edit, just want to clarify, there was no James. Story 16. My favorite interaction with a cop that was just the normal routine was back when I was 21 or 22. I went out with friends for a tour of drinking on Saturday. Started with a baseball game, then walked around to a handful of bars. So we spent about 8 to 9 hours getting trashed. This was the plan. It was a good plan. Part of this plan was for friends to come pick me up at the end of the night because the people I was hanging out with had plans, and I knew I was going to be too drunk, even for drunk driving. Bars close. Downtown is empty. Nothing is open at 3:30 a.m., so I wander around, waiting for my ride, and I have to bad. Nowhere is open and no one is around, so in my infinite inebriated wisdom, I decide to just on the sidewalk next to the street. Not even 5 seconds into there's a spotlight on me, and a cop getting out of the car. "Cop, what in the do you think you're doing?" Me peeing, "Cop, come on over here, I have to finish first." Cop waits surprisingly patiently. I make Racehorse look like a leaky faucet. The cop then proceeds to tell me all the charges I could get for in public, and asked me what I was thinking. I told him my master plan of getting drunk all night, then waiting for a ride. My friends were late. Public intoxication wasn't part of the plan. Neither was by police spotlight. He continued to tell me that I should be going to the drunk tank, blah, blah, blah. But he let me go. I sat on the curb, and he watched me smoke cigarettes until my friends came. Story 17. I didn't say it, my old roommate did, but got me arrested. He was in my passenger seat, and we were getting pulled over for speeding. We had like a bowl's worth of weed on us. Seriously, like a 0.2 nug and a Tylenol bottle in his pocket. He was a goody-goody type and had never had a run-in with the law. So he immediately starts to freak out, I look over and he asks what to do. I say, fuck it. It's like a bowl, just eat it. He opens the pill bottle and the smell instantly fills the car. I hadn't planned on that. So I cracked the windows and broke a cigarette in half and put it in my mouth to light and cover the smell. Broke it shorter. So when I lit it, it would appear I had been smoking it and hadn't just lit it then. Genius move, really, but I can't find a lighter to save my life. Fumbling around in the floorboards, I finally felt one. But the second I grabbed it, he was knocking on my window. Roll the window down. Do you know why I stopped you? Blah, blah, blah. As I'm reaching into my glove box for my registration, and he says, son, do I smell marijuana? I don't know why you would. So you don't have any marijuana in the car? No, sir, we do not. So if I bring the dogs out here, they're not going to find anything. Go ahead, but you're wasting your time. This goes on for probably 10 minutes before my roommate, who was still freaking out, decides to chime in with, sir, we had some weed, but we just smoked it. It's all gone. I looked over at him with a kind of what the, and kind of I hate you look instantly. Driver, step out of the car, please, was told by the officer. I actually passed the roadside test, but my buddy already admitted to smoking. So why give me the test? So he kindly transported me to a hospital where they took my blood for testing. Boom. OWI under the influence of marijuana. Thanks, Tim. Story 18 cop pulled me over because I had a tail light out. He asked where I was coming from. I said I was returning from a friend's house on XYZ Street. I looked at his badge and saw that he was the father of one of the girls that was at the same party I was coming from. I said, yeah, I saw Sarah there. She looked like she was having fun. The cop just gave me a look and said, get that light fixed. And he zoomed past me and made a U-turn ahead of the party. I guess he didn't know his daughter was going there. Story 19, after a night out, me and a couple mates decided to walk home about 5 miles. After a couple miles, the alcohol started to wear off, and we thought about getting a taxi if one came past. We see something in the distance, and being sure it was a taxi, we waved it down and proceeded to try and get in. It was an unmarked police car, and we were given an absolute bull-locking by the plain-clothes police officers inside. It didn't help when one of my drunken friends tried to be as smart and said, prove it. Story 20 didn't happen to me. But when I was in high school, one of my classmates was pulled over for suspected DWI. When he was asked to recite the alphabet, he sang the entire alphabet song, along with the ending, next time won't you sing with me. Story 21 bought a really nice wooden box of cigars, wrapped in bubble wrap duct tape, and put in the trunk. The box was a gift for a friend. I do not smoke, and I didn't want to risk some damage during the trip to his house. Well, police makes me pull over. Officer asks me where I'm going. He asked me to pop the trunk. He opens it and finds a wrap box, which sort of looks like a bag of cocaine or heroin or whatever. He obviously asked me what's inside the wrapping. I say the true cigars. He doesn't trust my word. So he asked me if he can unwrap it. I say, yes, of course, officer. Point is, he can't manage to unwrap the thing. I have the brilliant idea of taking my utility knife from the trunk to cut the wrapping and just get it over with. Mind you, said officer was bent over with his head inside the trunk, still trying to unwrap the Gordian wrapping, while another officer was standing behind me after having checked license and registration. I say, I found my knife while holding said open knife in my hand and pointing it toward the officer. It'll just let you imagine the rest. Edit, this was not in the U.S., by the way. BLBLBLBLB, no, actually scratch that. It was in Germany. We spoke in English, though, because I do not speak German yet. Long-term memory with me. Story 22, stopped at a ride program. Basically a roadblock checking for impaired driving. I was just getting off a 12-hour shift. Anything to drink tonight? Yeah, I had a bottle of Coke and some water. Cue 15 minutes of questioning. Never be a smart ass to a cop. Story 23, I remember some years ago, some friends and I were shooting a scene for a zombie movie we were making and had stopped in this field a little of the road. There were like 5 of us standing at various points in the field and the rest conversing around the cars. When a police car pulled up, they asked, what are you guys doing here? Cue my friend saying, I lost my cat. They spent the next few minutes trying to help us search for the fake cat. It was a whole thing. Story 24, when I was a 15-year-old who thought he was I told a cop, while surrounded by 3 others, why don't you put that little pistol on your hip down and we'll see how tough you really are. If you'd ever like to know what it feels like to be tackled by 4 police officers simultaneously, give that line a try. Story 25, after being stopped, rudely questioned, breathalyzed, and my license Sergo checked by 2 cops I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. They realized I was average Joe and explained I was in a known druggo area. I then asked them, oh, so that's why you were being so obnoxious. Story 26, admitting guilt when they asked, do you know why they're here? They oftentimes don't know why they're there. They're just following up on a call with loose information based on what an outsider observed. They don't know about the bodies. Story 27, at a Halloween party in a 3rd-story apartment. Outside smoking, I see someone in a cop costume in the parking lot. Yell at him who the F would dress as a cop for Halloween. He immediately broke up the party. Story 28, when asked if I wanted to take breathalyzer for the fun of it, and I said yes, pulled over for something else, had a little too much, and knew the cop. Story 29. When I was about 15 years old, a few of my friends and I were pulled over at around 3 a.m. way past curfew, and we were all stoned out of our minds. The only other girl and I were asked to sit on the tailgate to answer some questions. The cop asked me, "Why are you smiling at me? This isn't funny." I respond with, "I'm sorry, officer. I wasn't aware I was smiling." Story 30. I was 18 and possibly high long time ago. Can't remember, and when he asked for license, registration, and insurance, I gave him my health insurance card. He just looked at me and said, "What is this, son? And not your doctor." Never actually gave him my proof of car insurance. Story 31. That cop just shot a guy. While filming said cop with my phone, don't play paintball with cops. They can't take a joke and will shoot you in the... Story 32. I had been gotten clean about a year prior, and I was with 4 sober friends in my car. I get pulled over at around 2 o'clock a.m. on a Saturday and tell myself, just be honest, you're doing nothing wrong. I roll down my window, and the cop says, "How long since your last drink?" I reply, "A year." I had to do a whole field sobriety test after he called me smart. Story 33. Guy kept driving over the corner of my grandfather's lawn. He lived on the corner, so the same truck would cut the corner by driving over a patch of grass. My grandfather had enough of it, so he got out a 2x4, slammed a bunch of nails in it, and buried it in the torn-up patch of grass. Sure enough, the same truck hits it one day, blowing out not just 1 but 2 tires. He's freaking pissed. He calls the cops. Officer shows up, hears about what happened, and tries to explain to my grandfather that while what the truck driver shouldn't be driving on the grass, that putting the board with nails in there was dangerous and could have gotten someone hurt or killed. At this point, he's just trying to give my grandfather a warning. My grandfather responds, "Shit, if I couldn't find the nails, I was going to put a bouncing Betty a landmine in there." The officer rubbed his brow, as if in distinct pain, and squeezed out the words, "You really shouldn't tell me that." Thankfully, my uncle was there to stop my grandfather from repeating his claim or making things any worse. Story 34. My aunt had a terrible divorce when I was a kid. The type of divorce where police came to the house. One time, 10-year-old me asked the cop, "Do you use the sirens if you have diarrhea?" He was a good sport and laughed a little and said, "Kid, I'm not classified to tell you that." Then he winked, so I would take it as a yes. Story 35. I didn't actually say anything. I rolled up to an intersection at 3 a.m. in my recently purchased muscle car and saw 2 cop cars parked at the corner and just punched the accelerator, slammed it to the floor. I was half a mile down the road when I saw their little headlights far back in my rearview mirror. I asked myself, "What are you doing?" I turned abruptly into a fast food restaurant drive-thru and turned off my engine and lights. They zoomed by and never saw me. I think I could have made it home, but I was feeling really guilty and just sat there. Eventually another cop car saw me, and they all surrounded me. They told me to get out of the car. I got out, but had a jacket tied around my waist, which really made them suspicious. "What's that around your waist?" "My jacket." "Remove it slowly." I untied the jacket and let it fall to the ground, which exposed the enormous hole in the back of my pants, which had happened earlier that evening. "This is not your night, is it?" The cops were all about 30 feet away, but we're starting to piece together the story of my evening. "No, sir, not really. Why did you speed away like that?" "I really don't know." One of the cops came up to frisk me and froze when he felt a large lump of metal in my front pocket. "What's that?" "Those are my tips. I'm a waiter. I had a huge pocket of change for my shift earlier at a burger shop." Backstory is I had a regular customer at the burger shop who had this Plymouth Duster 340. It was root beer brown and dangerous looking, with air shocks, huge tires on the back, and mismatched rims on the front. The paint job was vaguely Starsky and Hutch. The owner bragged about how fast the car was and said he had outrun cops a couple of times. I bought the car for $640, and his cop story must have lodged in my brain. So a week later, I had a terrible shift, including splitting my pants up the back, and went for a long joy ride after getting off around midnight. I was kind of tired and heading home when I rolled up to the intersection and saw the 2 cop cars. I swear there was absolutely no thinking, just foot down on gas pedal. One thing I learned: in a young male brain, decision-making apparatus is not well formed. Dangerous ideas that sound cool, but are really stupid can be acted upon with no thought. So, when you hear something that sounds kind of scary cool, think about it seriously before you let the thought just come to rest in your memory. Uninspected and unevaluated, it can be dangerous. Story 36. Know me, but my in-laws. They were a New Year's party and had had a couple of drinks. My mother-in-law isn't much of a drinker, so she had a couple of glasses of wine early and then switched to pop and stayed sober to drive. They got stopped at a roadblock on the way home, and when the cop asked if she had been drinking tonight, she replied, "Only a couple of drinks earlier, then I switched to Coke around 9. The cop laughed and sent them on their way. Story 37. My time to shine. So I'm from Louisiana, more specifically a small town by the name of Marksville. This is very relevant to the story. So I'm driving my hopefully soon-to-be girlfriend, her best friend, and her mom in my car in another town called Pineville, get pulled over for speeding in the school zone. Cop comes up, and it goes like this, "Sir, Do you know why I pulled you over? No, sir. You're about 10 over in a school zone. I am sorry. I didn't realize this was a school zone. You didn't see the big signs that said school zone or my lights or anything like that. No, no, sir. Were you from Marksville? At this point, he spoke in a very sarcastic tone. Do they have cops in Marksville? Yes, sir. They just made CNN a week earlier, while Baltimore and Ferguson and Black Lives Matter were still all over the news. Two black cops had chased some white guy in his car at like 5 o'clock a.m. for no legitimate reason, started firing at his car. Because reasons? Guy crashes. Cops walk up to the car, find out they just shot his 6-year-old son 5 times in the head and chest. They just got charged with second-degree murder. Still got out of the ticket, though. Story 38, dude. You're being ridiculous. I was in a friend's house on my bike, 17 years old. Provincial law says all minors must wear a helmet or something to that effect. I was about 100 m from home, and a cop stops me, tells me to get off my bike and walk home to get my helmet. All right, whatever. Feign cooperation as they drive off. Jump on my bike, and head off trail through the woods as soon as they get out of sight. Once through the woods, there's a road, and guess who happens to be driving by? Are you serious? He pulls me into the car to show me the law book and all that. I get mad because 17 years old and authority and blurt out, dude, you're being ridiculous. This is a stupid law, and you're enforcing it to be at kids for no reason. He took my bike in his trunk and drove me home and talked to my parents. Later that day, I biked to my friend's house with no helmet. The police coming straight from the suburbs. Young man's got it bad cause I am white. Cop, do you have any drugs? Me, I wish. Story 39 was in my car at a park at night after it had closed with my girlfriend at the time. Cops roll up right after we had finished in the back seat. As we were trespassing by being in the park at this time, I get out of the car to talk to the officer, and he grills me, asking about my girlfriend. He asks me, is she decent? And I'm thinking like, yeah, she's pretty hot, so I say yes. Officer then goes and opens the car door and sees her still naked in the car, and it goes, no, she's not. Get dressed. He then gave us a warning and told us to leave. Story 40, biggest up of my legal career so far. Client is appealing a conviction for speeding and stopping beyond stop lines, with a careless driving charge based on his speed and stopping over the lines, capping all off. He had been unrepresented when convicted in the lower court. Note that the careless driving charge was obviously duplicitous and bullshit, but he was still convicted. In hindsight, it suggests that the first judge really didn't like this guy. He tells me that his driving was fine, and the only reason he was followed and stopped in the first place is that police wanted to search his car. I asked if they found anything. He said they found absolutely nothing. I was briefed very late in this matter and didn't have any more time to consult. So off I go, do what I can to contradict the fairly consistent evidence of 3 police officers. Nothing in their tendered statements said anything about a search, but my client said it happened, and I decided to put his case that the cops were fabricating the driving matters and only wanted to search his entirely innocent vehicle to the cops. This was not necessary. Hindsight again, but sometimes a narrative can help a judge, and other times it assuages the client's post-conviction feelings. Sometimes they just want their version told clearly in court. I am much slower to adopt this tact now. Constable, did you search my client's vehicle? Yes, I should have stopped here. I had what I needed, that they searched the vehicle and did not know what the witness would be saying next. Why have you not detailed this search in your evidence thus far? Because of what we found. Oh, what was that? Yes, I was that much of a moron on the drugs. It didn't change the outcome of the case. I got rid of the careless driving, but he was otherwise guilty. And I had asked pointedly if anything was found, and my client confirmed that nothing was found. So it was definitely his fault. But yeah, many lessons learned. The cop probably really enjoyed that. I guess I got to give them a win every once in a while. Story 41, crossing the border, and asked what I was going to buy. I said Coke. Americans have the best Coke. I am Canadian. We no longer have vanilla cherry Coke. Story 42, when passing by 2 cops wrestling a troublemaker and forcing him in the back seat, I asked if they by any chance could drive a certain route, dropping me off at home. Story 43, I made a pit stop for some food on Highway 70 at like 10 p.m. back in 2014. When I got back on the road, I forgot to turn my lights back on. So obviously Mr. Police officer helped me out with that by turning on his own. When he pulled me over, he asked where I was heading, going to Colorado. Officer, oh, what takes you there? Highway 70, sir. Then I accidentally handed him a bus pass instead of my license. Edit also, when he asked if I had any further questions, I held him up for a couple minutes asking about license plate patterns on different types of vehicles. Story 44, after a night of drinking at my friend's house, I decided to sleep in my car instead of attempting the 1-mile drive home. I woke up around 4 a.m. feeling much better and decided it was safe to head home. Before I knew it, I was getting pulled over because it was pitch black outside and I completely forgot to turn my headlights back on. I admitted to the officers that I drank the night before, but tried to sleep it off instead of driving home. They gave me a sobriety test anyway. Because I reeked of alcohol, I was doing a pretty good job, but they were hesitant to let me go because God, did I reek of alcohol. Then it hit me. This was my chance. I've been prepared for this moment my entire adult life. Gentlemen, what if I told you I could say my ABCs backwards? Officer, you couldn't even turn your headlights on. Me, but what if I told you I could say my ABCs backwards? Officer, I don't know. Can you say your ABCs backwards? Me, I don't know. Will you let me go if I can? Officer, wait, what, no, maybe hang on. Walks back to the car to talk with his partner after an eternity. They both walk over to me. Officer, say your ABCs backwards. And well, think about it. Me, will you ask it like they do in the movies? Officer, what? Sure. Ahem, ma'am. Can you say your ABCs backwards? Me, I sure can. Drunk or sober. Recites ABCs backwards. Laughter, more laughter. Officer wipes tears. God damn it. Get out of here. We'll follow you home. I gave them both high fives and headed home. It only took me 2 whole minutes to realize my headlights still weren't on. Story 45. Do you know where the Taylor Swift exhibit is? Anybody at the State Fair of Texas this year knows what I'm talking about. And the cop was happy to give me directions to it. And I was asking for a friend. So it's cool, man, it's cool. Still, literally the dumbest thing I've ever said to a cop. Story 46. We were drinking at a provincial campground, and there was no parking nearby. So my friend Craig parked in the fire access area that clearly said no parking. A cop shows up an hour or 2 later and asks Craig to move his truck. He already had 3 or 4 beers and told the cop so. I told the cop I only had 1 drink and had my graduated license and would move it if he allowed me to. The cop looks at me and says, all right, you look pretty good, and I reply with, well, thanks, officer. But I don't swing that way. The cop immediately turned bright red and walks to his truck to write my friend a parking fine and tells me to move his truck. Please note that I am a male. Story 47, not me, but I have a buddy who claims that one time when he got pulled over, the cop took so long to come to his window that he was getting pissed. He was already late to sports practice, and the cop wasn't helping things. When the cop finally came over, he simply said papers. My buddy said, back scissors, I win. He didn't get a ticket because the cop thought it was funny, but he did have to do a field sobriety test because the cop swore that no sober man would do that. My buddy was completely sober, just a sarcastic tool. Story 48. It was October 5th of 2013, and I was arrested for a DWI. During the arrest, I was yelling about how their dumbass shouldn't be working during a government shutdown and that there are a bunch of Nazis trying to arrest me and ruin my life. When he first pulled up to the scene of my accident, I said, just shoot me, I'm a worthless repeat offender anyways. All of this was taken from my police report, and I don't remember a thing from the actual encounter. My BAC was 24, and I definitely had no place behind the wheel. I have since sobered up and been clean for 18 months now. Story 49, whilst hammered and carrying a stolen galvanized steel gate through the center of Plymouth. Put that down, no, I'm a police officer, shit. Puts gate down, what's your name? Tom. Is that your real name? No, proceeded to give him my real name and get a bull-locking. He let me off on account of me being a fresher. I didn't even go to uni. Edit structure. Story 50, once I was pulled over for rolling through stop sign. Cop asked me why I didn't stop completely. And, like an idiot, I said, I thought I was stopped enough, still only gave me a warning, though.